sitting
and
down with that
Splashdown.
anti-Semite when Charlottesville occurred, saying both.
They made it back. Dude, I came right at the... Look at that.
And SpaceX Freedom, Splashdown.
Got to see it.
Copy Splashdown. We see main chutes cut. Nick, Alex, Butch, Sunny.
Look at the timing.
On behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
It is an amazing, what a ride. I see a capsule full of grins ear to ear.
And as you can see on your screen, we have visual confirmation of Splashdown. Dragon Freedom has returned home, and NASA astronauts.
System safety verifications are in progress. We'll report back
Dragging
when recovery
these
personnel
nuts.
are en route.
One of them is going to lightly criticize Elon Musk at some point, and Elon's going to throw a fit. Oh, for sure.
Section 2, 4.800.
Oh, for sure. Especially the ones that came back, because they were already criticizing Elon. And Elon called them the R word, didn't he?
It is necessary.
He literally said the astronaut in space was like stupid.
In the distance, we can see the recovery vessel making its way.
Copy, you're in section 2 for the environmental assessment in 4.800. That is not necessary today.
Understand. Raising buzz.
So we will continue to have communications between the Corps and Nick Hague, the commander of Crew Dragon Freedom, which just splashed down 2 minutes ago off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. Dragon Freedom has returned home with NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Sunny Williams, Butch Wilmore, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbunoff. They're back on Earth after approximately 17 hours of a return journey from space.
The SpaceX recovery ship and team have been waiting for Dragon's splashdown, and they will now make their way to the splashdown location. The teams have been ready and waiting about 3 nautical miles away, so it's going to take them about 30 minutes or so to make their way
and
to...
SpaceX Freedom. Pretty sure we're in Stable 1.
Copy, Stable 1. We see the same.
It's going to take about 30 minutes for the recovery team to make their way over to Nick, Sunny, Butch, and Alexander, who are still seated and secured inside that Dragon spacecraft there on your screen. Incredible views there of that thermal protection system, or TPS. That Dragon capsule was pristine, white color before it departed the station, and we can see how the reentry phase, the thermal protection system did its job. Now, if you're wondering what that hole, that like bucket area is, that is underneath the side hatch. That is where the main parachutes were stored.
This is CGI.
When we saw the Dragon capsule docked at station, it looked very different. The panel that protects and covers the main parachutes, that was still intact, as well as the panels that enclose where the drogue parachutes are located. We can see fast
Freedom.
boats.
SpaceX is go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside in the next few minutes.
Freedom copies.
We can see those fast boats. We weren't kidding when we said they were fast. While it does take about 30 minutes for the main recovery vessel to make its way over to the capsule, these fast boats will be doing a couple of things simultaneously. A couple of them are going to be working to retrieve the parachutes that you see in the background there of this drone shot. Those parachutes will be the ocean
Clearly
surface.
flat.
We want to make sure we
The Earth, I mean.
we are able to pull those out. The recovery vessel there closest to the spacecraft is going to be performing some safety checks. We can see there they're using an instrument that is basically working to detect if there are any hypergolic vapors or fumes that are still residing in and or around the Draco thruster nozzles or outlets. The hypergolic fuel, which is necessary for on-orbit burns to maneuver the spacecraft. Unfortunately, those hypergolics are are unable to be breathed. They are toxic. And so this team here is doing those initial safety checks to make sure that it is safe for the rest of the recovery team to approach the spacecraft. They're also checking to make sure that any residuals from the pyros are safe and are not going to cause any issues. We can see the team working their way around the spacecraft to do these basically these sniff tests on all of those Draco thrusters.
And as we continue to await the recovery of our Dragon spacecraft with NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Sunny Williams, Butch Wilmore, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov inside, Dragon has autonomously completed several steps to safe itself following splashdown. We are continuing to see Dragon in what is known as stable 1 configuration. That's kind of the ideal configuration following splashdown. It's upright, and the Dragon capsule is in the right configuration for it to be hoisted into the recovery vessel Megan, which you do see a little ways off in your screen approaching. Dragon will continue to remain live on air with you through that recovery process, all the way through the point where the crew is extracted from the Dragon spacecraft. Now, if you are just joining us, the mission has gone smoothly so far. Dragon successfully splashed down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida at 2:57 p.m. Pacific, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time this afternoon.
Approximately 17 hours prior to splashdown, Dragon autonomously undocked from the International Space Station, completed a series of departure burns, jettisoned its trunk section, and performed its final burn, the deorbit burn. This placed the Dragon spacecraft on a trajectory toward Tallahassee, Florida. Dragon successfully re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, followed by deployment of its parachutes to slow the spacecraft down to a gentle
that previously
splashdown.
went up there on a Boeing
We're now
mission
going to follow the
and bring them back down to Earth.
Unfired checks
This is a
are
successful
nominal.
mission.
Rigging is in progress. Approximately 25 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with SpaceX flight surgeon.
And so what we did just hear there was communications that those hypergol checks were complete. They didn't find any of that upon those checks, so we'll continue to move through the timeline. Next up is a process called rigging, which you see happening right now on your screen. This is when a SpaceX recovery personnel actually works to climb aboard the capsule and work through procedures ahead of lifting onto the nest of the recovery vessel Megan. We heard it's going to be about 25 minutes or so until that lift actually takes place.
Okay, Freedom, the next call will be from the SpaceX flight surgeon on Dragon to Ground Private.
Stop the steal.
Understand. Thank you.
Too big to rig.
Callouts there indicating that the crew will have the opportunity to do a quick check-in with the SpaceX flight surgeon. This is standard procedure for every Dragon spacecraft when it returns to Earth. It's just an initial check-in, make sure everybody is doing okay. They will also have another check-in with the flight surgeon once they are on board that recovery vessel in the background. We can now see that SpaceX recovery team member they're on top of the Dragon spacecraft. They are going to be working to install plugs in the Draco thrusters to ensure that none of those, and to ensure that no more hypergolic fumes or vapors come out from the spacecraft. They'll also place harnessing around the spacecraft that are required in order to lift it out of the water. Go ahead, Sandra.
Continuing to get some views of the recovery personnel, both the main recovery vessel Megan, as well as some of those fast boats that we've discussed previously. It looks like just a beautiful day there out off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. Weather was pristine. We were able to get undocked from the International Space Station as expected at 10:05 p.m. Pacific time yesterday evening, and Crew Dragon has since completed steps ahead of its splashdown at 2:57 p.m. Pacific, and we're now stepping through procedures to get Dragon hoisted up onto the Megan recovery vessel and get the crew extracted out of the spacecraft. And you did see some of the parachutes that were near the spacecraft. Upon detection of landing, Dragon automatically releases those main parachutes to prevent wind from pulling the spacecraft. Dragon then automatically safes any pyrotechnics that may still be present on the vehicle and may automatically perform additional minor system reconfigurations. The astronauts will remain seated and in their suits at this point, but the onboard air conditioning keeps things temperature controlled inside the spacecraft so the crew remains comfortable, and the communication systems.
Freedom, SpaceX, ComCheck.
SpaceX, this is Freedom. We loud and clear.
Copy that, Freedom. Have you loud and clear as well, and Dragon to ground is no longer private.
Understand, thank you.
As we saw there on the screen, we have a couple of fast boats in the recovery fleet that have quickly
they better
moved
make sure that
into
the astronauts don't have
Splashdown
any weird
location.
photos on their fucking phones as they're denied entry into the States. You guys don't have anything in their camera roll? Exactly.
The two fast boats have very specific roles. Excuse me. The first approach is focused on immediate safety inspection, as we saw. They do this for spacecraft integrity and checking for any presence of those hypergolic propellant vapors. And this ensures that it is safe for the recovery vessel to approach Dragon. Once Dragon is cleared for full approach, as we heard is the case today, the team begins rigging the spacecraft for water recovery by the recovery ship. The second fast boat is responsible for parachute recovery and also serves as a redundant boat to the first one that makes the initial approach to the Dragon spacecraft. As we saw a little bit earlier, we were also able to see one of the recovery team members get on a jet ski to help gather up the parachutes that were automatically detached from the Dragon spacecraft upon splashdown.
And it will take a little over 10 minutes for the recovery crew to complete their safety checks. Once they complete, the team will begin preparing Dragon to be lifted, and as you see, they are preparing for that to take place at this point. As part of the preparation for this lift, one member of the recovery team has climbed on top of the spacecraft already so they can attach Dragon's hoist rings and connect to the lifting lines. It will take us less than an hour to raise Dragon to the recovery boat and remove the crew from the spacecraft. After medical checkouts, the crew will return to land within 4 hours by helicopter. And if no additional medical assistance is needed, the crew will board a waiting NASA plane and depart for Houston.
I got on right as they were doing the splashdown.